welcome to the first in the three-part series of The Colour of Wine by Bayman Hospitality. Good evening, my name is Mandy. I'm the Bayman Hospitality Wine Ambassador, and I'm your host for this evening. My experience in the hospitality industry had me working really closely with some amazing wine suppliers. And I find the world of wine to be fascinating, and I'm luckily enough to be working towards my WSET 3 qualification. And I now run a wine blog called Come Wine With Me. This event today is in partnership with the Wine and Spirits Education Trust and Nightimber, and it gives us an hour to explore wine from a different perspective, talking today to our diverse panel of wine experts. Before I introduce you to them, I'm going to do a bit of housekeeping and format. The first 30 minutes we'll be discussing the sector with our amazing panel. We've got some questions for them, and then we'll move on to a wine pairing where they will be pairing our Nightimber Demi-Sec Cuvée, kindly sponsored by Nightimber, with a dish from their heritage. We're taking questions as we go on, so feel free to use the chat box on the right-hand side to add your questions, and we'll put them up to the panel towards the end of the discussion. Can you please keep the questions relevant to the discussion topics as well? And now I'm going to pour myself a glass of Nightimber, which I've basically already done earlier. And as we go to the panelists to introduce themselves. Alicia, producer, why didn't we start with you?
Hi, everyone.
Oh, it's coming to me. So I am Alicia, but I am wine writer Alicia. So I think for this evening, I will be cast as Alicia writer, and the other Alicia will be Alicia producer. So just a little bit about me. As I said, I am a writer, a freelance writer currently for productions publications such as Imbibe and Swell Wine Group, which is Sarah Abbott MW's newsletter, and a few other things in the pipeline as well. I'm not going to say too much about how I got into the wine trade, because that is a question that's going to be coming up. So yes, just a little very brief segment about who I am and what I do.
Alicia, producer, again, over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Alicia. I am one of the co-founders of Folk, which is an English craft wine business, which my fiance and I launched in July this year. And we produce English rosé made from grapes grown in Kent, with a focus on community, our tribe, and sustainability.
Samita, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Sumita from India. I'm an independent wine consultant. I have a range of diverse experience across the wine trade, covering viticulture, winemaking, as well as the marketing, business, and service side of the sector. I'm the founder of Sommelier, a wine web publishing site where I'm the lead writer, and I write about various wine reviews, winemaker meets, as well as wine regions. I also do private client management, helping my private clients to devise cellar management plans and wine buying allocations and sourcing strategies, as well as private tastings to enhance awareness and educating them about new upcoming trends. On the wine business side, I have recently, in the last 8 to 10 months, started providing active strategic consultancy in the form of branding, marketing, and communications, objecting and revamping branding guidelines, so as to be able to help producers to diversify and reach out to a wider customer demographic. And obviously, having a unique cultural background, it really helps to find out interesting customer client base. Apart from that, I'm a wine judge. I'm also the treasurer for Circle of Wine Writers, because I have a finance background. So yeah, there's I have my fingers in a lot of pies here. That's all.
Great, thank you. Syra, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Syra, also known as Pursuit of Greatness, and I'm in wine communication. So my objective at the moment is to improve, accessibility and outreach when it comes to wine. And my background is I am half Jamaican, half Pakistani, so I'm very much qualified to be on this panel. And I think I would also say that I also do have another career which I'm pursuing full time, and that's in the City of London.
Great, thank you. So that's our lovely panel, who are also all drinking the Nightimber Demi-Sec Cuvée. So I'm going to go to our first panelist question. And I'm going to start with Saira because we finished first, so I'll start with her. What was your pathway into the wine industry?
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually, because I kind of just stumbled across it. So what happened was, as I said, so I work in the city as well, and I was seconded to a different organization where I had, some more free time, and I decided that I wanted to fill that time with something useful. So I did like a sort of random Google search about hobbies, courses, things to do, and came across, WSET, and I thought, wow, this is really, really interesting. So I decided to pursue some wine studies, and I obviously don't regret that, of course, because it's been absolutely fantastic. So as I was sort of immersing myself in my wine studies and trying to, consolidate what I was learning, trying to build on what I was learning, and, going along to wine tastings, visiting wineries, vineyards, etc., I found that there was a niche that I really wanted to fill. And as I sort of covered in the introduction to myself, it's all about making sure that wine is not intimidating, and really giving people the sort of knowledge that they need to approach wine. So Pursuit of Greatness really was something that wasn't in the plan, but I'm glad it is, and came about as a result of my wine studies.
Amazing. Alicia, how did you get into wine producing? Producer Alicia, that is.
It was fairly similar to Saira in a way, in the sense that my co-founder Tom and I had always been interested in wine. We found that it was always quite difficult to choose a wine because you're presented with this huge wine list when you get to a restaurant, and you kind of go, well, I don't want to spend too much money, but sometimes you assume that the quality of wine equates to how expensive it is. So we just wanted to sort of break through all the noise that comes with the wine market and have a high quality English wine, especially English, because we think that it's becoming more and more popular for very good reasons, because it's so nice. And so we decided to create our own wine business and work with a really great wine producer or winemaker in Kent, who helps us select the grapes that we use for the rosé. And we really wanted to create a brand, exactly like Saira said, which was created for everyone. So we chose a name which meant tribe and sharing and having a sense of community when you're drinking wine, rather than thinking that in order to select a wine, you have to know a huge amount or be a master of wine yourself. So, yeah.
Awesome. Moving on to the other Alicia.
Yeah, so a little bit similar to everyone else, kind of fell into it, but I guess the very beginning was quite humble. I'm from a, not very well-to-do family, and my holidays as a child were in a camper van going around Europe. And I always specifically remember at that time, they used to have honesty boxes at the bottom of vineyards and fields. So you just trundle along in your campsite and there'd be produce for sale, and you would taste it. And if you liked it, you would leave your money and off you went with your bottle of wine. And there was something about that romanticism and the honesty and the fact that the wine was from that place and from that region that I always found enchanting. And, bringing that forward then to when I was of wine drinking age and went on holidays myself, I always found myself going to the vineyard visits on holiday. But it was very much kind of a little hobby I did kind of as and when I was on holiday. Went to work in another career and then took a break from that career and didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I think, like many people, I found solace in the bottom of a delicious glass of wine and thought, actually, this isn't so bad. And that's how it started, really. I'd already kind of been to the vineyard visits and was excited and liked to hear about it. So, yeah, I did my WSET 1 and then started to work in a very big retail store. Then from there maymoved on to working at the Sommelier Wine Awards, then teaching at South London Wine School, and then writing for Imbibe and other places.
Amazing. And then Smita, how did you get into the wine industry?
Yes. So I think amongst all four of us, or all of us, I must be probably the oldest person out here. But having said that, so my story might go back for 20 years, but I'll make it short. So I grew up in India during a time where there was no wine. The only alcohol that is also currently majorly drunk was spirits, which is wine and vodka. I grew up specifically in a subsect of a religious that does not drink. So my parents don't drink. My parents' have never had no alcohol whatsoever. So for me, it was the unknown, which kind of got the attraction. And I tasted my first Goanese wine, which obviously because of the Portuguese influence, there was wines, but very sweet and cloying, flabby wines, I would say. They were not very nice. For the first time when I was 18, I literally had a sip out of a Tetra Pak, and it was not very exciting. And when I asked my parents, they said, we have no idea where wine is grown. If your husband allows you to drink wine, then you can. So it became for me a motto in life to look out for a life partner who allows me to drink alcohol. But anyway, so I grew up in one of the key gateway professions. So I did my chartered accountancy, and I worked in audits and consultancy, tax consultancy. Then I moved to a bank. So my first 10 years of my life was completely working as in finance, as a financial corporate risk analyst, structuring deals. And then I moved into HR because I realized that I really enjoy the people's contact and talking on a social level. And so I moved into HR for banks and started doing recruitment and compensation schemes and all, because I had that financial knowledge to kind of back it up. So with this came along a lot of moves. I worked in Bombay, Delhi, Hyderabad, and then I moved to London. And then in between, I had kids. And so much later in my life, in my 30s, when we were in Hong Kong, we had a closing deal where Bordeaux was served. And this was literally 12 years ago, maybe 2008 or 9. And that's where I had my first sip of Bordeaux. And I asked my husband really ignorantly, what is Bordeaux? Is it a grape or is it a wine? And my husband said, well, if I knew, I'll be teaching wine. Why don't you go figure it out for yourself? I just love it. And I, frankly speaking, didn't enjoy Bordeaux at all. And so I took it upon myself that if I want to really be able to enjoy something, I need to kind of study. So I started doing the WSET 1, 2, 3. And the more I studied, the lesser I felt I knew. I think it was I just needed to know fully what I was talking about, what I was drinking about. And then I started sommeliering a little bit after I put the kids to sleep. So it was like, it was a fun experience. I didn't do it for a career. It became a career after I moved back properly into London 7 years ago. And so I've enjoyed it. I've done viticulture. I've done a little bit of winemaking with English wineries. It's been a pretty interesting road, actually, all the way through. Then now I do wine writing. I do wine education. I'm in the judging for IWSC as well as Sommelier Wine Awards. But I still have a lot of experience to kind of go on a very strategic level to be able to advise wine producers. And now is the time of change. And so I just see that all my work is kind of coming into fruition. And so I'm a Master of Wine student in stage 2 right now. So the learning just keeps going on, doesn't it? It never finishes.
Amazing. What an entry into wine, like.
Yeah, from literally just 12 years ago, where I didn't know anything. Yeah. I didn't even know what Bordeaux was.
My husband 12 years ago, and we were both drinking a lot when we met. So completely different story. Great. So next question, and I'm going to put this to producer Alicia. What have you enjoyed about the industry so far?
It's been, my day job is as a lawyer, so it's very different compared to the corporate legal world, in the sense that, I get to meet a whole different range of people. It's very fluid in the English wine industry at the moment. So there are a lot of new names coming out and a lot more established names like Sharpham, like Nightingale, which are really creating that road for us new English wine producers to actually come out to the market with a really good standing to come behind. I would say there are gaps in the market, which Sarah and Alicia responded to previously, about there being a lot of, I think especially men and women out there in the UK who feel like wine isn't particularly accessible to them because the brands pitch themselves to be quite elitist. and the brands themselves are slightly old-fashioned. So I think the market has become very fluid now, with us younger brands coming in and showcasing wine to show it as a wine which you can share with your friends. And you can, you don't have to go to bars and drink cocktails or spirits. You can go to bars and really enjoy a glass of wine and taste it and get to know the different grapes that are in there without knowing a huge amount about wine yourself. You can still enjoy wine. So I think I've really enjoyed that in terms of the fluidity and how exciting it is at the moment.
Yeah, I totally agree. English wine is just so much fun. We're in a really great revolution of it. It's great.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on to a question that's really close to my heart, because obviously we're all off a ethnic minority group, and it's one for all of you, but I'm going to focus on writer Alicia to start with. Can you describe some of the obstacles you've encountered that have been race or ethnicity related?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's not been an overt, a barrier to entry in that way, as if I feel like I've been turned down necessarily. As I said, I started by working for Majestic Wine, and I felt like I was on an equal level, on equal pay as everyone else, depending on where you are. And then moving on up to, working in the wine school and Sommelier Wine World. Again, I didn't feel like that was necessarily a barrier to entry. What I think was the problem, and is still the problem, is the fact that people don't even know it exists. So how can you, coming out of school or university, be part of a group or an industry that you don't even know exists, or a title or a job title that doesn't even come into your vocabulary? I think that I found that really difficult, and I didn't know when I was 15, 16, 17, 18 that I could work in wine. It wasn't for people like me, and that's partly why I think I then didn't find it until I was in my mid-20s. And I think at a entry level, once you have found it, again, it's relatively equal. I've just actually written an article which will be coming out later about ethnic diversity within hospitality in its totality. And whilst at the bottom kind of levels and the lower paid jobs, it's quite diverse, it's actually in those higher ranking and more decision making roles that diversity is not seen. And I think that's the issue, is the moving up and the talent pipeline.
Awesome, thank you. I totally agree as well. Saira, on to you, same question.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm happy to report that, I haven't really come across, any treatment that I can really attribute to my race. But, on the kind of massive scale. But I think one thing that I have observed, and that very much comes as, me being a consumer and also being in wine, is that, because there isn't much representation of, ethnic minorities, you can sometimes face these sort of preconceived notions about you as an ethnic minority. So, I can attend fine wine tastings, and be, but not just fine wine tasting, actually, in various different types of domains in wine. People can be surprised to see, an ethnic minority person there and thinking, I can't believe you're interested in wine. I can't believe you know anything about wine. And that, for me as an individual isn't really a problem, because I'm quite robust. And, if I come across that, it doesn't really bother me. I'm going to do what I'm doing anyway. But there are some other, individuals who may find that really damages their confidence and self-esteem. And I think something that is probably more important than just, a kind of personal issue and the kind of feeling included in this wine world is if, people are making decisions about you that are based on your race. So if individuals have preconceived notions about you, they may make a decision that they're less likely to engage you for some particular project, whether that's being on a panel, whether that's in marketing, because they're not sure whether, what you're like or whether engaging you would work. And I think that can really be a problem when we're trying to increase representation and increase diversity in wine.
Can I just exactly kind of mimic that point, actually? For instance, as a writer, I've been to several tastings, and on that assumption that people have, I've very much been poured a lesser amount or been given a little amount of time, and someone will just fine and will not talk to me or give me as much time of the day as they would to the stereotypical, wine writer or wine taster. So very much to kind of mimic what you're saying with the assumptions made there.
Yeah,
and I think also as well, because of the lack of familiarity, I think also, BAME people, let's use that term, which is, I guess, controversial in itself, but, Black, Asian, minority ethnic people, it's not just, a single monolithic group of people. Even everyone on this panel is very, very different. And, I think that, again, when you're dealing with preconceived notions about you, when you're trying to enter a space or when you're in a space, that can be quite difficult. So I think, it can be, really can be an obstacle, or otherwise is an obstacle. It's an annoyance for people who are trying to be in that industry.
Yeah, I think we found that when we were looking at who we wanted to market our wine to, one of my key focuses was I really want to let people, if we call them BAME, call them ethnic minorities, whatever we want to label themselves as, to people out there who know that there is a wine out there for them. And some responses I got were, well, people in India don't really drink wine. And, people in the Caribbean like rum, not wine. And it was those sort of preconceptions about, even growing up in the UK, if you're from a certain background, you have a spirit associated to your race and you don't drink wine. So you're automatically excluded from the wine industry, be it as a career or even as a consumer, which I found quite difficult to try and get across to the branding agencies to say, I think you've got it wrong there. As an Indian woman sitting here, I can tell you we do drink wine. So, go and do some more market research and then come back and talk to us.
So just extending on that note, Mandy, there is a few issues here which I want to point out. Obviously, our cultural backgrounds are diverse, and what I have observed in the 8-9 years is there is a tendency for people to kind of trying to fit you in a box. So either you belong to the old school network, the university network, and he's from so and so, for example, Bristol or Imperial, and therefore must be good. And it's just a lack of understanding of other cultural backgrounds and other just social backgrounds that people have come from. I faced a lot of obstacles, a lot. And to this day, why I'm working independently is because, I'll be very honest, I applied to at least 50 organizations, Majestic included. And I don't know whether it is a matter of, I still don't know whether it's a matter of being female, whether it's a matter of being BAME, Asian, or whatever minority ethnics, or whether it's just lack of interest to figure out where we can add value. And I don't blame it on anybody. It's just probably ignorance as well. So I applied to one of the retail outlets, and they obviously asked me for my date of birth, a year of birth, which is ridiculous. And then they came back saying, "Oh, will you be able to lift cases of wine?" Which I found absolutely flabbergasted. I was really shocked to hear. I mean, I'm a marathon runner. I have been doing Pilates for 15 years. I mean, if you see me, I'm completely on the fitness track here. I applied for a wine buying job, and they said I don't have buying experience. Now, it's different. Buying is a general skill set. If I say that you have knowledge of the banking products, that's a very much regulated, specific, specialized field. But wine is not regulated or specialized in that effect. It's not regulated or governed in terms of its buying, skill set. You can be a wine buyer if you have good negotiating skills. What is more important is the product knowledge. And I just feel that WSET is a great organization, but people are really not understanding that the product knowledge is what is so important. You can do any kind of buying if you have the product knowledge, and that is the one that needs to be highlighted rather than do you have buying experience. I applied for, in the end, I was asked, would you like to apply for a financial analyst role, only because I'm a chartered accountant. But when I said, are there opportunities for me to move into wine buying? I was told, you cannot aspire to become a wine buyer. This is just a pure finance role. So it's just trying, what I understood is fitting you into that. It's either you're female, you're middle-aged, or you're an Asian, and therefore this is all you can do. there's nothing that concretely stands out as a race to me. I can only think that, in a meeting, I didn't fit in because I'm not part of the network or I don't have the background. Although I think over a period of time, a lot of people are recognizing it, and I'm thankful for that. But it's taken a long time. It's not been an easy route. For as opposed to somebody who comes from a background in the UK, it's very easy to fit in. Because you'll know somebody who knows somebody, a network in the UK industry, and then you fit in. But for me to be a complete outsider, I've struggled in every term, and don't know what the reason is. It could be being female, because we are working in an industry which has been predominantly male oriented. So there's a lot of dynamics here which has kind of worked against in a negative way.
On that point, I find the same as a consumer. If I'm in a wine shop, and it's happened to me at my local wine shop as well, the first time I went in, they asked me, do I like wine? I'm in a wine shop. Why do you think I'm in here? And I have to prove, as a consumer, my qualifications to tell them that I have an interest in wine. And the reason I'm looking up the, Barbera is because Nebbiolo is my favorite grape. Like, I shouldn't have to prove to myself as a consumer I'm buying his product.
I've had exactly the same thing. Whilst I was working in a wine shop, I went to another wine shop with a friend and was completely just dismissed by the staff. So much to the point, actually, that I wrote in a letter of complaint, which I very, very rarely do. I was just so embarrassed, actually. Yeah. It's not even, it wasn't even necessarily anger. I was just hurt and embarrassed and like ashamed that I was made to feel like that. Yeah. So even that was me working in the industry, and I was still felt like that.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, so we're bringing out the female, obviously. So there's a lot of things that we're not ticking the boxes in for, and that's where it is. I mean, how many? I'm sure all of us and many in our viewers circle. If you are a woman and you've gone to a restaurant with your partner who is a male, the sommelier will probably come and serve the wine for tasting. Yeah. To my husband, and he would say, sorry, I'm really scared of wines. She's the boss. And they'll go, oh, I'm so sorry. So we're always thought of as a second class citizen here.
So that brings me really nicely on to my next question. How do we support the next generation of ethnic minorities and getting them into the wine industry? And Saira, I'm going to start with you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think, a lot of issues have been touched on. I think the sort of theme that's running through this is, because there's a lack of representation, that sort of has the effect of there being a lack of familiarity in terms of aspirations. So if you're coming from a background that's not exposed to wine, you're less likely to aspire to it. And should you want to enter into that, you're less likely to feel included, and which might deter you from pursuing anything. So I think one of the things that I'd like to see what would help the next generation, which you sort of includes myself as well, is, seeing, I think, and it's something that's bandied around in a number of professions, including my other one, which is mentoring. But I think mentoring is really important. And I think it's really important to have a sponsor behind you, someone who's going to take you under your wing, especially where there isn't yet this representation. And I think that's really important. And I think I should also add to that, you don't have to have a mentor that looks like yourself. What you need to have when you have a really good mentoring relationship are two people, a mentor and a mentee, that are engaged in that relationship and are committed to building on that relationship. And for me, I think having that will really result in change. So having mentoring, and also for the others who are, the generation behind us, so to start seeing people like themselves may well help others to think, yeah, this is something for me. I want to go into, there are a number of professions in wine. We've been talking about, so many different things, but there's so many careers you can pursue, whether you want to be on social media or whether you want to go into sales or importation, whatever. But I think that, as I said, it's about mentoring and it's about representation, and I think that that's going to result in change.
Awesome.
I also think that the works of Plumpton College should not be underestimated. I think they are doing a fabulous job. It just needs to be really built upon, and you need more number of spokespersons to bring out, because there are a number of us who go into viticulture and winemaking accidentally, or because they've not been able to be successful in what they had aspired for. I would love to see a change. I would love for 16-year-old kids saying, I want to become a winemaker because I have enjoyed. And I think it's a visual circle. You want to make wine attractive, and as a communicator, that's the whole point. So if the upcoming generation feels, oh my God, this is actually pretty cool. There's some very cool people involved. They would say, you know what? I want to be a winemaker. I'm good at chemistry. I'm pretty creative in my stuff. Where are the avenues that I can become one? And so it's there's so much to do, and I didn't know about Plumpton College at all for the longest time. Absolutely, the work of WSET will never go waste. I think, to be very honest, that's the first thing that I got hold of when I was doing my research. There was nobody to tell me what I should be looking to do. I just had my neighbor, and I was quite fortunate, who was a diploma, and he just said, can you just look at WSET? But and this is kind of many years back, but I think going forward actively, there should be an involvement, not just mentoring, but also universities to this effect. Like in California, you have UC Davis, to kind of really build upon this as a career that is sustainable and, you know, it brings into a professional level of work.
I think just to follow up on something you said there about wine being cool, and I think it's really important, and I think it's still a problem whereby, you know, when you talk about wine or when people are communicating about wine, it's not accessible. And, you know, there seems to be a contest to like show off how much you know about wine. And I think that really needs to stop. You know, you don't need to show that you have wine qualifications. It should be apparent in how you speak and how you conduct yourself. So I think it's really important that, you know, when we're, you know, especially for wine communicators and wine tutors and everyone else in a sort of public facing role, that, you know, you can be drinking a Brunello and you don't need to wear red chinos. That's also fine. I think people want something fun and cool about wine. And, you know, that's really important as well. Accessibility, not only from the point of view of that it's something we can enter into, but it's something that's fun. It's something that you do want to get into.
Yeah.
And also that you can afford to. I think it's absolutely great that we're talking about education, and I do 100% think that's, you know, very much needed. But it is so expensive to get in, you know. The WSET 2 alone, I think, is maybe £700. I think diploma then is £5,000, and that's great if you can afford it. But I think we maybe need to think more about scholarships or sponsoring or something, because that really is a barrier to entry. If you're coming from, you know, a background when you just don't have that type of money up front, it's not as if you can go to university and you can get a loan that you're slowly repaying back. It's got to be all paid up front. So I think that's something we need to really think about too. And where those courses are being advertised. You know, I was speaking for an article I've just recently done. We were talking about getting people into those jobs. So one, you've got to know those jobs exist. And two, you've got to actually find where they're being advertised. So if you're just advertising them in the same trade magazines and in the same area, you're just going to get the same faces again and again. So you've got to really think outside the box and kind of think, right, we're in this area, maybe we should go to the job centre, or maybe we should go to the local community college or whatever. So that's really what needs to happen to be able to push and change faces that we see.
Amazing. So this brings me really nicely onto the future of the industry. Obviously, COVID has put a spanner in the works with the hospitality industry, and the wine industry has had a knock-on effect from that. How do you see the future of this industry evolving? What would you like to see? What changes would you make? And producer Alicia, I'll go to you for that.
I think it's a really exciting time, you know, as we touched on. I think one of the silver linings of COVID was that people started ordering their own wine directly from businesses rather than going to the supermarket and finding, you know, what was their go-to wine, which they bought all the time because it was always on a deal, it was always promoted by the supermarket or the wine shop. So I think people are experimenting a lot more when it comes to the wines that they drink, and especially with wine pairings, I think people are cooking more as well. They're cooking more at home, they're using fresh ingredients, so they're experimenting more with the sorts of wines that they drink with their food. So I do think people are being more adventurous with their wine selections and what they choose. I do hope that, touching on the question that everyone just answered just now, I do hope that there is a much more diverse selection of wine brands and wine producers and everyone in the wine industry going forwards, because I think it is a real shame that the 99% of wine that you see on the shelves is marketed usually as a Caucasian-owned vineyard with lots of money and is meant for people like that. So I think it would be really good, and I hope in the future that there are a lot more wines on the shelves which have diversity and inclusion and community and support as the real ethos to what they're trying to portray. So yeah, hopefully positive for the future.
Smita, any nods to the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've been working with a few wine producers in this lockdown, and it's been amazing that I think there's a big shift also in terms of, obviously, as Alicia said, a lot more of direct consumer sales now developing. I think producers are now realizing, and I'm kind of helping them understand, they need to form links directly with the consumers now. I think it's about time that they need to also really focus on engaging consumers, and that's where I'm kind of helping them build up a wider demographic, not just age group wise. I think the European, Australian, American market has become extremely saturated. A lot of the young millennials are not even drinking now anymore. I think it's very important right now, if you want to keep this industry active, wine producers have to think like a consumer and have to reach out as if they are the consumer. If they want to reach out, they need to, I mean, there is a huge population of upcoming, emerging luxury and style seekers in Asia, for example, China. Massive growth in the industry. They're very keen learners as well, and that's where the power of ethnic minority now stands. They're wanting to learn more, they are wanting to consume, but also want to relate more with things. And so to this effect, producers have to really kind of also think on how they need to change their objectives now going forward. So yes, on the one hand, some portion of the hospitality would have suffered, but there's always opportunities that comes out of it, and we have to make use of what we have at this moment, and just take the bull by its horn and kind of change our whole outlook. So the future is really bright for the entire world right now, and I think this is where we need to really press the accelerator and then move on, bring out the whole BAME power, bring out the power of emerging drinkers, which would be all around the globe, and we need to be able to aspire and cover all the regions: South America, Africa. We've got Russia also emerging right now, and then these are all markets which need to be really kind of worked into. Yeah. And Asia, China, and Thailand, Malaysia. There's so many avid seekers of wine and consumers, and also people who have the purchasing power. So
I'm going to have to move you on because time is ticking.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
We haven't even got to the pairing yet. So
my favorite bit.
Yeah, and we'll start with you then, right, Alicia. So we've asked all of our panelists to pair the Nyetimber Demi-Sec Cuvée, which we've all kindly been gifted through our lovely sponsorship with Nyetimber, with a dish from their cultural heritage. So, writer Alicia, do you want to talk? Can you, we haven't got that much time, so if you can give us 2 minutes on your dish and why you're pairing it with.
Absolutely. So my cultural background, heritage background, I am actually Jamaican, Indian, and English. So I had a lot of things to choose from, but I decided to go for Jamaica. And on my Instagram, you can kind of see at the bottom, I do try and very much pair wines with foods that are always overlooked. I'm a very big advocate for trying to move wine descriptors, wine and food matching away from this very European centric gaze. I think that is a way we can really become more inclusive if people can see, yes, this food does go with this wine, and how can it go? So I decided to choose Jamaica's national dish, which is ackee and saltfish, but I turned it into fritters. And the recipe I used for that was actually from a book called, an ebook called Community Comfort, which is a specific book that has been written by 100 plus, compiled, with about 100 plus chefs of the diaspora. Do you know, I can never remember how to pronounce that. And it just came about, and all of the proceeds are going towards BAME people affected by COVID. So they've just kind of been amazing, put this together in only a few weeks, and you can download it now. I don't work for them. I just think it's an absolutely fantastic idea. So in there they had ackee and saltfish fritters and wine, sparkling wine the acidity in it goes absolutely fantastically with fried foods, fish and chips and fried chicken, etc. So frying the fritters just meant the acidity really worked to cut fat. And obviously, with it being a good Jamaican dish, there has to be a bit of Scotch bonnet in there. So the sugar in the wine just really worked to, balance that. And it's just, I thought it was excellent. I also put it with a pineapple salsa, which was an Ainsley Harriott special. And I really think that the notes coming through the wine include, some tropical notes of pineapple and mango, and that just perfectly went with the caramelized pineapple salsa, and obviously the sugar matched with the caramelization as well. So that's what I went, and I will be posting the recipe and the photos and all of my kind of tips that I used and why it goes together on my Instagram. So check it out.
Amazing. That sounds delicious. I might have to come around to your house for dinner soon. Producer Alicia, what would you be pairing this with?
I mean, other Alicia has really put me to shame because I have not made my dish, but I really liked this. I found it on the sweeter side, so I found it difficult to pair with traditional Indian dishes, which are sometimes on the heavier side. So I'm from the north of India in a region called the Punjab. So I thought it would be quite nice to pair it with the Indian style tapas dish, where you could have some poppadoms, which everyone loves, which are quite light, and pair it with some of the acidic chutneys that you get. So the sort of lime pickle, which would be quite a nice break to the sweetness that comes from the wine. And then also along the fried trend to have some pakoras, which are sort of deep fried potato with fenugreek through them. And then also to have some seafood as well, because although the wine is quite sweet, it's also got some really nice citric tones to it. So I think that would pair really well with some tandoori prawns and just a really simple onion and garlic and garam masala sort of spice to it.
That sounds incredible. I think I'm just going to do a little culinary tour of this panel. Saira, over to you. What would you be pairing? Again, you've got a great cultural background, so what would you be pairing it with?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. So as I said earlier, I have a Jamaican mother and a South Asian father, Pakistani. So a lot of things to choose from. And interestingly, so I have an Instagram page, Pursuit of Greatness, and one of the things that I've been totally obsessed with from when I started that page was food and wine pairing. And actually, most recently, I did an Instagram live with a sommelier in Ghana about what to pair with Caribbean and West African food. And I think, something that you have to have in mind, and I think also with Asian food as well, is, these are really complex cuisines. There's a lot going on. You have a lot of seasoning, you have chili on there, involved as well. And when you're thinking about what do you do with, dishes as, rich and beautiful, as complex as these, you really need to try and work out what are the dominant flavors. So as I was drinking this demi-sec, meaning that there's some residual sugar in this, I was thinking about, okay, and then I was thinking about there's residual sugar. We're starting here. You always think of something chili, so you're going to start thinking about curry. But I was like, actually, the level of residual sugar in this is probably, not enough really to sort of temper that chili. So I'm going to focus on Jamaican dishes, and I actually am not focusing on, any other dish apart from, because I think that Scotch bonnet is a really key ingredient in Jamaican cuisine, and Scotch bonnet is a really, really strong chili, and I just don't think it's going to work with this. So I actually am going for something which I call, Caribbean spiced dishes. And so what we do often, and we use the kind of Jamaican hat on now, is we, apply seasoning to a lot of things. And what I have in mind here is when we season, our meat, when we season chicken, I'm thinking here white meat, chicken, pork, something like that, and we put it in the oven, and we have some rice and peas and vegetables. It sounds really simple, but it's not. It's amazing. And I would have that. So I would have some Caribbean spiced chicken, no Scotch bonnet involved in the cooking, that I think would go really beautifully with this wine, given the residual sugar. It's not going to make this wine taste harder. It's actually going to be a really, really beautiful match. And you can get your Caribbean spices. You can look for season oil, Caribbean seasoning in any local supermarket right now.
Again, that sounds absolutely amazing. Maybe next Friday I'll be around. Rita, can you hear me? I know you were having a few tech issues.
Yes,
there.
I got back.
Great.
I did miss your sessions of tasting, so I do apologize if I'm going to repeat it again. So, Night Timber is a fabulous sparkling wine, and Cuvée Sherry is their demi-sec style, and I classify this as a very beautiful, delicate, light, refreshing sparkling wine, but which has a very powerful mineral streak of precision to it. So on the one hand, it's very easy to kind of underrate this wine as not powerful. That mineral tension that it displays makes it a fabulous pairing. And though the dosage is about 38 grams per liter, I think that dosage integrated with that really sharp, kick-ass acidity that goes behind this wine is what makes it an absolute foodie wine. So I had made a Northern Indian. It's one of the most delicious dish, and it goes well for children, adults, everybody loves it. It's called Matar Paneer. It's Matar is peas, and paneer is the Indian style of cottage cheese. It's very different from brie and all the other. It's curdled milk, so it's got the fatty content to it, but when you mix it with the green peas, it just brings out the delicacy of the vegetables. And the wine, Cuvée Sherry, is very much green fruit driven. So the green peas are just fabulous. It's got that texture that really rolls into the vibrancy of the wine. And the finish is fabulous. It's long, it's lemony, yet it's got that little mouth-filling texture, and that texture is what the dosage is providing. So you have to take the whole palate from beginning to the end to really appreciate the beauty of this wine. So Matar Paneer has got the tomato onion gravy, and that again really blends and integrates into the precision and the sharpness that the wine carries through. And so any ginger foods, because ginger is quite pungent, but the mellow fruits of these wines, of the sparkling wine of Cuvée Sherry, is just beautiful to blend in. So I can even think of pad thai, Thai fish cakes, and again, so I would say lightly spiced wines, because the fruit is quite subtle and mellow. You don't want it really overpowering with lots of chilies, but it can take on a lovely blend of spices. So it could even do the allspice, it could do the garam masala and the cumin and the coriander powder pretty beautifully. And it's just, on the palate, it just doesn't seem overpowering, and that's a beautiful thing, but it's that the mineral tension that gives that edge to the wine. And so I loved it. It was just fabulous. And yeah, these are just some of the few pairings that I could think of.
That sounds delicious and incredible and amazing, and yeah, I'm watering at the mouth now. So we're going to go to some of the audience questions we've had throughout the session, and there should be one popping up on the screen right now if technology serves us well. Not yet. Give us 3 seconds. Maybe I should start planning my food tour as we wait. Great. So the first question is, barriers to entry, a huge problem to many careers path. BAME individuals are more likely to be from poor backgrounds, unaware of careers available, and cost prohibits entries. Sorry, I'm reading a different question to what's on the screen. Excuse me. Tech issues. With an all-female panel, I can barely. Sorry, I need to make my screen bigger. With an all-female panel, also interested to know if there's any gender biases, actual or perceived, in the industry. Over to you, Alicia, producer, to start with.
I think in my personal experience, going through the whole wine production from start to finish, I only met one other woman during the whole process. Oh, wow. So it's not, no one ever told me you can't be a wine producer because you're a woman, but it's obvious. You have to look around you, and there wasn't a single non-ethnic minority person, and apart from one other amazing woman who works for our winery, there wasn't a single other woman. So it's very clear that there are barriers to entry, and it wasn't ever said to me that you can't do it, but I think that was the perception that I got, was it will be harder for you to do it.
Anyone else got
Look, I think I would say the very fact that we still have women in wine as a hashtag, as an expo, as a group, women in spirits and industry, and whatnot, women in hospitality, that answers the question. The very fact we still have to have, women only panels or women only diversity boards or women only audits, data audits, that shows that there is a perceived gender bias, absolutely. And again, mimicking what Alicia said, in my own wine journey, it's been mainly men, especially when working in retail and when I had kind of my brief stint in fine wine, absolutely.
Well, I have always worked in a very male-dominated. Finance, for example, banking has always been male-dominated. So I wouldn't say that wine is specifically, different from in that respect. I think women generally have to work harder to prove themselves because we are all in professions that have hitherto been quite male-oriented. So I think it's in our blood now. We just get on with it, right? We don't have a choice. We just have to go fight for it.
Yeah, I guess, I sat here silently probably for a reason, because I actually, I'm listening to everyone's experience, and some of these, answering these questions can sometimes be quite individual. I think a few of us have had or still have city careers, so we kind of know, we've been through the whole kind of, yes, it's male dominated. But I actually think in terms of the question, which is gender bias, and whether you'd suffer bias because you're a woman, I definitely think, at least recently, as I'm coming into this, and I'm a newbie, I admit that, but I can't, and I've spoken to other women as well who are in wine communication, and I think that's less of an issue now than the diversity in terms of ethnicity issue, to be frank, in my view. And I think also, we do have a number of kind of female groups, women in wine. I participated as Pursuit of Greatness on, Wine Women Wednesday with a friend of mine, Skin and Pulp. But some of this is also to celebrate, our gender and to celebrate women in wine. So I don't think it's always necessarily there because there's an issue. I think it's also there to celebrate, who we are. So I think it's definitely, not the perfect situation, but in terms of facing biases that you're going to be treated less favorably, for example, because you're a woman, I think things have rapidly changed in comparison to what you may well say, 10 years ago. And I think that would apply as people keep mentioning their other careers and what they've had, it would also apply probably to the city as well. So I think if we're focusing on, the issue though, it's, ethnic diversity is an issue where we haven't seen much change. If people compare the situation now to 5-10 years ago, query whether it would be actually that much different.
Yeah, amazing, thank you. Okay, so next question. Do you have anyone in the wine world who you admire or look up to as a role model? Samita, I'll start with you.
Oh, okay.
We can start with someone else if you can't think of anyone.
In all honesty, I'm going to be very, very honest here. I never had anyone to look up to, in complete honesty, just kind of knowing it in my culture, not knowing nothing about wine, coming in it from a complete outsider as opposed to having a family that are in wine or know about the industry. There was no one for me that I looked at and saw and went, amazing, that's who I'm going to kind of follow or be part of. And I think that's part of the issue that we're trying to do right now, with the mentoring and whatnot, is to make sure the next generation coming up can see someone and can feel like they can move on through. But that's just for me.
And I totally agree with you. And, we've got a little panelist chat going on to make sure everyone's happy. And when Samita was giving us her background, we were saying she's life goals because she's got about 10 more years experience in the industry that I have, and she's where I want to be. So I think that's, you guys are the next generation of role models that we should be looking up to. So
I think I might also add to that. I someone who I look up to, and she's not the same race as me, but I really look up to, and I like the career that the famous Jancis Robinson has had. And in terms of wine communication and where I see myself and what I want to do, doing something in my own name and being a respected, woman and individual, because there's more to me than being a woman and more to me than my race. I think this is a person who has had a very, very successful career with some longevity and is well respected. And that is something that I aspire to.
Amazing. Awesome. So I think we have one more question about a BAME food and wine pairing pop-up when the world is a little more normal? So I'm going to answer this one because Lorraine, who runs, founder of BAME Hospitality, and I have been talking for 6+ months. And we first started talking when COVID started, and we kept talking about live events. BAME food, it's such a wide description. BAME food is food from an ethnic minority that's entwined into our culture and lifestyle so much at the moment. But I think absolutely once this lockdown pandemic thing is over and we're allowed events, I definitely think a live wine event is on the card. So watch this space. And that's it, guys. It's come to the end of our hour. I just want to thank you so much. This has been such an amazing panel to host, to be part of. This is, our future BAME wine or just wine role models for the next generation. I want to thank all of our audience for tuning in tonight as well, and our event partners, WSET and Nightimber. This was the first event in a 3-part series. We've got the second session on the 16th of September, which I will be hosting again. It's at 8 p.m. and there will be another Eventbrite link to register to. If you have any questions or want to get in contact with BAME Hospitality, please either contact us via our social media pages or head to the website and send in your requests, queries, questions, comments, etc. It's been so lovely. And again, I just want to thank our panelists for taking time out on their busy schedules on a Wednesday afternoon. And cheers, guys.
Chin
Happy
chin.
Wednesday, happy Wednesday. Cheers. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Really, really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you.